All right, let's get to our 5 headlines. Number 1 here, the Daily Wire reports Kenosha prosecutors have dropped the sex assault charges against Jacob Blake following a plea agreement. Blake pleaded guilty. Now, Jacob Blake, of course, he's the man in Kenosha who was shot by police officers as police officers were called to the scene. He was allegedly harassing a woman who also had accused him of raping her. And he had a knife. He assaulted the cops. He tried to get into a car, not his car. He tried to get into the woman's car with his kids in there. They tried to stop him. They told him to stop. He reached into the car, and then they shot. So that was the recap on that. But he had these sex assault charges. Again, the woman whose house he was at had accused him of sexual assault. Now, prosecutors are dropping those charges as part of a plea agreement, right? Blake pleaded guilty to 2 counts of disorderly conduct in order to get the 3rd-degree sexual assault charge dropped. Blake told Judge Brian Schroeder, "Honestly, Your Honor, though I plead guilty to this, I don't consider myself to be guilty. I pretty much took this opportunity to get to see my children quicker." Blake also said he did not sexually assault the woman making the allegations against him. Blake's attorney said dropping the charge meant prosecutors were acknowledging that ultimately the state could not prove it in court. Walworth County District Attorney Zeke Weidenfeld told the outlet that the sexual assault charge was dropped in part because the accuser refused to cooperate with prosecution. Yeah, well, of course she refused to cooperate. And the fact that they didn't have evidence to prove it in court does not at all mean it didn't happen. These are we have to remember this. These are extremely credible charges against Jacob Blake. The reason why they're extremely credible is because his accuser called police the morning that this incident happened. She said that Jacob Blake broke into her window at like 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning and walked into her room where she was sleeping and sexually assaulted her. And then stole her keys, her car, and a credit card and left. She called 911 and she was trembling and crying. She was still in her nightgown, and they came and they saw her there crying and obviously traumatized. I would call that an extremely credible accusation. This isn't one of those accusations somebody comes out of the woodwork 30 years later. This is at the moment calling police. This is what happened to me. She's not cooperating. Okay, of course she's not cooperating. Her alleged abuser, who, by the way, she says has been abusing her for years, not just that one time, for years, she said. And he's been lionized, canonized by the media, by the Democrat Party. The potential new president of the United States went and met with Jacob Blake's family and Jacob Blake himself and was singing his praises afterwards. So all of the most powerful people, Matt, put yourself in this woman's position. Assuming that her allegations are true, which I absolutely believe her. Believe all women? No, we don't believe all women. I believe this woman because the allegations are credible. Put yourself in her position. You are viciously assaulted by this man. And now, and then a few months later, he comes, steals your keys. You're trying to protect him from your kids. Gets himself shot after assaulting police. And now all the most powerful voices in society are coming to his defense and saying he's a great guy. He's a great father even. What is she supposed to do? She comes out and tries to get this guy locked away. She's going to be worried for her own safety. She's going to be worried about being dragged through the mud. So you can definitely see where she's coming from there. But where are the feminists on this? This is something where you would think feminists would come out and come to this woman's defense. I haven't heard anything. And we have seen this, whether it's with Jacob Blake, George Floyd. There have been at least 3 or 4 cases just in the last few months of BLM making martyrs and heroes and canonizing men who have abused women in horrible ways. And those women are silenced. Nobody talks about them. Nobody cares about them. Feminists not coming to their defense. Because feminists are, of course, disingenuous phonies in almost every single case. Number two, Governor Cuomo, speaking of disingenuous phonies, was on with George Stephanopoulos, who, by the way, Stephanopoulos is apparently lobbying to be Alex Trebek's replacement. That's another update here. I mean, he's not lobbying Cuomo. I don't think Andrew Cuomo makes that decision, but he's lobbying to get on Jeopardy, be the new replacement for Jeopardy. Talk about a step down in quality. I mean, you go from the most likable guy in America to one of the most insufferable goobers in America. That's a very steep drop in quality. Losing Trebek and ending up with this guy. It's like remaking a John Wayne movie and casting, like, I don't know, Kate McKinnon in his role or something, which I don't want to give Hollywood ideas. That sounds like something they would actually do. Anyway, here's Cuomo talking to George Stephanopoulos and the potential of a vaccine coming out soon. He doesn't seem very happy about it, oddly enough. Here he is.
We were talking yesterday about the importance of vaccine distribution in the next 2 months. What do you make of this news?
Well, it's good news, bad news, George. The good news is the Pfizer tests look good and we'll have a vaccine shortly. The bad news is that it's about 2 months before Joe Biden takes over. And that means this administration is going to be implementing a vaccine plan. You have 2 months, and we can't let this vaccination plan go forward the way the Trump administration is designing it, because Biden can't undo it 2 months later. We'll be in the midst of it. And I've been talking to governors across the nation about that. How can we shape the Trump administration vaccine plan to fix it or stop it before it does damage?
Yeah, the only thing maybe surprising about any of this is just how utterly transparent these people are being. Andrew Cuomo is not even trying to hide it. He does not want Donald Trump getting credit for this vaccine, does not want this coming out on Trump's watch, doesn't want it. Seems to me he would rather have people die just so Trump doesn't get the credit. Utterly transparent. And speaking of being transparent, Mark Seagraves of NBC4 in Washington reports, quote, D.C. Mayor Bowser and her staff attended Joe Biden's victory speech in Wilmington on Saturday. Delaware is on the mayor's list of high-risk states, which would require quarantine after returning. Bowser's staff says the trip was essential travel exempted under mayor's order. Essential travel. Going to a victory speech in another state so you can, shake hands and hug and celebrate. That's essential travel now. But Mayor Bowser just joins a long list of Democrat mayors, and they have really all been Democrats. Democrat mayors disregarding their own rules and saying, "Oh no, I get to be an exception to this." I forgot to tell you, just making up the rules as they go along. Democrats with the coronavirus regulations, they remind me a lot of my own kids. In maybe more ways than one, but they remind me of my own children, or they remind me of children in general. But my own kids, I play a game with them and they make up rules as they go, very conveniently. Like I'm playing tag with my kids and they just decide that whatever tree they're standing next to, oh, this is base, I'm safe here. That's what the Democrats are doing with the coronavirus restrictions. They can say, oh no, I forgot to tell you that you're not supposed to travel, but if you're going to a victory speech for Joe Biden, then did we not put that in the rules? I meant to. We meant to put it in the rules. That's an exception. This is something that liberals have never understood, or at least have acted like they don't understand. One of the primary objections to the coronavirus restrictions, it's not just that they're onerous, though that they are, and that is an objection. But what makes it worse, what makes it untenable and intolerable, and especially tyrannical, is that they are arbitrary and that they are not consistently applied to everyone. That is the real problem. If these restrictions were put in place and everybody was expected to follow them and no exceptions were made, and we're not making exceptions for BLM rioters and people who are dancing in the streets because of Joe Biden supposedly has won the presidency. And we're not making exceptions so that the mayor of Chicago can go and get her hair done, or that Nancy Pelosi can. And we're not making exceptions for Bill de Blasio in New York. Everybody follows it. I would still object, but it wouldn't be nearly as oppressive. Then we would be objecting on the grounds that this is just a bad strategy. It's not the right way to approach this. I mean, we would still be strenuously objecting. But what makes it infuriating and what makes it oppressive is the arbitrariness of it, and the double standards, triple standards, quadruple standards. The standards keep changing by the second. All right, number 4. If you want to see what real courage looks like, here it is. Look at this footage here. BLM protesters marching in Michigan. I don't know if these are protesters now or revelers, if they're celebrating. I don't know, but they're marching. This was on, I think, Saturday. And this is what you see now. You see these diners at a restaurant preemptively giving the Black Power fist so they don't get yelled at. And then there's this old guy here who's, I don't know what he's doing. He's raising the roof. That's not the Black Power symbol. He's raising the roof. Okay, a little bit behind the times with his gestures, but that's all right. Oh no, this isn't courage. I'm sorry, I used the wrong word. This is the exact opposite of courage. Also, notice how almost all these people are white here. All the people sitting at the tables, almost everyone in the crowd, all a bunch of white people. Virtue signaling by giving the Black Power symbol to each other. Look, I understand you don't want a mob descending on you when you're trying to eat your brunch or whatever you're eating, but at a certain point, you have to have a little bit of courage, grow a little bit of a spine. Number 5, checking in now with the great journalistic publication Jezebel. My producer sent me this. Blame him, not me. Apparently, the new adaptation of The Witches is facing backlash because the villain has a disability, and that's a problem. The article says, Warner Brothers has apologized after receiving criticism over their depiction of Anne Hathaway's grand witch character in their new adaptation of Roald Dahl's book, The Witches. Yes, it is pronounced Rual, by the way, not roll. In the movie, Hathaway's character is, which I just learned yesterday. I'm not going to pretend like I knew it before. In the movie, Hathaway's character is missing fingers, making it appear as though she has the limb difference ectrodactyly, commonly known as split hand. This falls into a harmful pattern of giving villainous characters physical disabilities, perpetuating the oppressive idea that people with disabilities are scary or somehow less moral than people without disabilities. The vice president of communications at Respectability, an organization that advocates for people with disabilities, also called out the film's decision to associate disability with evil characters, in this case even choosing to add a limb difference that was not a part of Dahl's original story. Unfortunately, this representation in The Witches teaches kids that limb differences are hideous or something to be afraid of. What type of message does this send to children with limb differences? According to a spokesperson for Warner Brothers, the studio was deeply saddened that their depiction of the characters in The Witches might have upset people with disabilities. But then listen to their statement. They said, in adapting the original story, we worked with designers and artists to come up with a new interpretation of the cat-like claws that are described in the book. It was never the intention for viewers to feel that the fantastical non-human creatures were meant to represent them. Is it just me, or is Warner Brothers throwing a little bit of shade here, as the kids would say? Maybe it's wishful thinking or projection, but I'm picking up on some serious sarcasm in their statement, which I like. At any rate, if this is offensive, then the Penguin in Batman must be really traumatic. Though you never know with that one, whether the Penguin is offensive on this basis or maybe because he's appropriating from avian culture, who really knows. But I am glad we're having this conversation because I've always been disturbed by the villains who wear glasses. As a member of the visually impaired community, VIC, victim, as a member of that community, and also as a member of the facial hair community, I'm extremely distressed by villains who wear glasses, have facial hair a lot of times. For example, look at this, Jim Carrey's portrayal of Dr. Robotnik in the recent Sonic the Hedgehog film. Great film by any other measure. But you can see there, he's got glasses and he's got a mustache. And when I see this, it's almost as if the makers of the film are trying to give the impression that anyone with glasses and facial hair is probably hatching a dastardly plot to kill a magical hedgehog. This is a stereotype that I have carried with me for years. Every time I walk down the street, people are shouting like, hey, catch any hedgehogs today, you loser? Ha! And they high-five each other. I run away crying. I mean, it happens every day. So I'm glad that Jezebel is calling attention to this issue. It is very important. Hey, you. You right there. Hit the subscribe button right now. Do it right now. I thank you for your compliance. It's somewhat appreciated.